All right, number one, running for office. It's kind of a very broad term, but it looks like different many ways. If it is from city, if it's your city council or your board of aldermen. In the city of St. Louis, they have a board of aldermen, and or some cities have city commissioners. You can also run for the county. A lot of counties have county commissioners or county executive or county legislature. Let's use where we're at right now. If you were to run here, where you're standing now, you could either run for St. Louis City's Board of Aldermen or St. Louis County to be on their Board of Commissioners or be the next St. Louis County Executive. Outside of that big picture, you can run for the state. So we're in Missouri, you can run for the state Senate, the state House, and or governor. So are a lot of y'all from Missouri in here? Missouri, where are you from? Philly. I just want to know where you're at so I can make sure the government we're talking about is kind of related.
Okay, Tennessee.
Tennessee, good. California.
North Dakota.
North Dakota, good. Yeah.
Mississippi.
Mississippi. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Sorry for prying. So for a lot of your state governments, a lot of where you all reside in, your city and county government may look different, but your state legislatures all look the same. Every state has a governor, every state has a state senator, and a state house of representatives. So there's a lot of options when running for office. There's a lot of opportunity in front of you. Opportunity, but there's barriers. Let's be very clear. Running for office should be open to everyone, but it's not. One of the biggest barriers, for example, I faced is my age. When I ran for office, I was 22. Everyone's like, well, he has limited experience, da, 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 da. And it's just, you're not taken seriously in politics if you're a younger age. It's very much tailored. Even United States Senate and all the way up to our president, they're like old heads. Sorry. But there is this perception in running for office that young people don't know anything. When young people, all the way back to even the Civil Rights Movement, when MLK Jr. was leading it, or John Lewis, they were in their young 20s. And we have seen time and time again, either if it's for the fight for reproductive justice, or the fight for voting rights, or the fight for gun legislation, have all been led by young people. And young people have always stepped up, really because they're forced to. We can't just go to school and not worry about getting shot. We can't, buy a house. We're worried about the climate. So a lot of young people are leading these charges because we have to. Number two, finances. To run for office, you have to use a lot of your own finances. That is a barrier not only for working class people, but young people and people who are more diverse. For example, if I was to call everyone in my family and ask them to just drop money, even for just, let's say, an emergency, I could probably pull $5,000 or $10,000. And that's a lot even for me. But for a lot of people who are running, who are lower income, who are working class people, are getting by as is. They can't, not only take off work, risk their job, but pull finances by themselves to run for office. And then lastly, the political acumen. So why I really put this up here is there's this idea that young people or people who don't have finances aren't ready to run for office, but then at the same time we lock out those same people from getting political experience, which better suits them to then run for office. So a quick tip, these are all things that need to change, but they are the current lay of the land. So do we have any questions on the slide?
Acumen is just a synonym for experience.
What?
So acumen is just a synonym for experience.
Yes.
Thank you.
What are some of the financial commitments you've had to make running for office?
So I get it, but I don't get it. So when I ran for office, you can't, everyone else in your campaign, well, just to be very clear, I'm a progressive. And I really wanted everyone to be paid in my campaign. So as a, oh, they're fine. So as a candidate in the state of Missouri, I don't know other states, but in the state of Missouri, candidates cannot get paid. So when I'm out knocking doors, making phone calls, out working, all of that was for free. I not only maxed out my credit cards, I was missing work, and I risked, being able to work my job. So the biggest barriers as a person is you work for free. Although everything around you is in your best interest to get you in that office, it is a risk financially to work for free and to basically go down in credit cards, to miss meals, and as a candidate you cannot get paid. So that makes things very tough, and that's why a lot of people don't run, because they can't risk either cutting 40-hour weeks to 20 or just not working and having to pay bills. So that's kind of the biggest thing that surprised me. Any other questions?
What was your day job while you were running?
So I actually worked for the city of Kansas City. I oversaw their climate plan. So I helped build that for the city of Kansas City.
Oh, cool.
They were a little lenient on me. They did cut my hours from 40 to 20 hours, but they were fine with it because I was running for the county. So I was working for the city. So I think they made it very clear if I was to run for city council or something, then I could not be a city employee. So that's what I did in the meantime. We'll go to the next slide. Okay. It's really important, if you have any desire to run for office, or you plan on, or you're even thinking about it, to have a plan, and to start early, to lay the groundwork and start to slow cook it. That's what it's called. Let's say, for example, you run for the school board, and you want to do that here in 2 or 3 years. You need to start getting involved with the folks on the ground doing the work, your education groups, even taking trips down to the Capitol and advocating for pro-education bills. So it's never too early to start. That also builds more experience under your belt if that is your goal. So no one should really go into life thinking I'm going to run for office, but if you feel that you're inclined and you think you're potentially going to run, it's always in your best benefit to start early and lay the groundwork on that road ahead. So quick tip, it's never too early to build relationships, get in the community, and get the experience you need. So, okay, this is the most important one, but I may be preaching to the choir. Do not run for office if you don't have a why. We have a lot of affluent folks or people who just want to run for office. Even in the state of Missouri, they're like, well, I'm retired, and I got money, I'm just going to do it. It's like, you really shouldn't run for office if you're not like, I want to be in that office to do this. I want to move the needle on this. Do not run for office if you don't have a why. Why I ran is we had Scott Burnett. He sat as a county legislator, and he was in that seat for 28 years. He started his political career in the Jimmy Carter area, if that tells you where our representation is compared to today. As well as, was going to be the first person of color, as well as first openly queer person and young person to seek county office. That's important here in the state of Missouri, especially when we see an onslaught of anti-LGBTQ bills. That representation is important. So why I wanted to run was because there was no one who looked like me in county government. And that was my why. So I think if you run with a plan and run with a why, that'll better help you target where you need to be. Let's say here, like if I'm a St. Louis resident and I'm a progressive and my congresswoman is Cori Bush, we're pretty good. But if there's someone there that doesn't identify with where you are, or it's not in the best interest of the community, that should be your why, because the community deserves better, needs better, and needs better representation. So tip, if you want to see something change, be that change. A lot of these old dogs do not change. They're very set in their ways. So it usually takes them being challenged and pushed out of office for them to finally be representative of the people. Any question here?
What would you say so don't run for office if you don't have a why, but what about who, what, when, and where?
That's like another slide.
Okay. I'll let you cook.
Yeah. And also another thing to be aware of, I don't want to be up here lecturing. Like, I'm still very young. Like, I'm 25. I'm still Gen Z. Like, I don't want y'all to think like I'm like an old head who knows all this. So this is my experience and the work I get paid to do. So it's relevant. That's what I'm saying. I'm not like old. Okay, so tips. Get some experience and weigh your decisions. So, y'all, if one thing about running for office is they're going to look into your past. Politics, especially if it's competitive, is messy. And especially when you become a candidate for public office, nothing is off the table because you've basically said, I'm no longer a private citizen or civilian. Anything I've said, anything I've done, anything I've attended is up for grabs because you are basically standing up in the public square saying, pick me, I would like to represent you. So people are going to look into your past, so be aware of that. But that's nothing to be ashamed of. People change, but just be aware of that. When I ran, they brought up all my thirst traps. And I'm like, well, I'm young. And they're like, well, you're still 22. So just be aware of that. They're going to bring up your past, as well as, your present. Running for office is a full-time job, and you're not going to be paid for it. And it's going to wear on either your partner, your life, your job, your mental health, your eating habits, how much self-care you have, what you say, what you do, and any free time. So be very well aware of that when you're weighing this decision, that it's going to completely change your life. And everything you say will be part of the public record. Everything you say can be taken out of context, made into an ad. But yeah, you got a question?
But how did they do that? To bring that up, or how did they bring that into the conversation?
Well, they played on the fact of my youth and that, is this someone you want in public office? And it's like, I'm like single and gay, so I do kind of have a lifestyle. Right. But it's, that's the thing. It's not based in fact or reality that I can't do a good job. It's in politics. Anything's up for grabs. They can make anything. And they brought up, when I led the Black Lives Matter movement in Kansas City, they said I wanted to defund the police. When county race has nothing to do with the city police. So it's like, even things that aren't relevant can become an issue. Or stuff like that. Weigh your decisions. So next thing is, what does this look like for your future? One thing I want to be very aware with people is that, even running for office moves the needle. Even if you don't win. We have a mayor here in this city, Mayor Tashara Jones, first black woman to be elected, and she ran 2 times. Or even you have Congresswoman Cori Bush in St. Louis, she ran 2 times. And she lost, both of them lost. And it's like, your future, it moves the needle not only for representation, what people look at, what is a candidate, but more importantly, you don't always win your first race. You don't. But it's about what you lead on to be. One thing I learned, which is really interesting, do you all know the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer? Well, before, everyone knew her as, this big forward-thinking governor. She served in the state senate. She served on a school board, and she was PTA parent. So she had, well before she was this big governor, about 25 years of public service under her belt. So the future can look like whatever, based on really whatever. A lot of your decisions and forward thinking should be based on the future. For example, if I ever decide to run for office again, based on the what damn year is it? 2024 election, if Trump wins or Biden wins, those are 2 completely different futures. Or if we have a Democratic governor or a Republican, completely different environments. So in some future you may be needed, people may need that representation or another. So the thing about running for office in politics and even just society is it's the sands of time move the environment like this. So it's very hard to plan ahead on what you want to run for office. So my advice is kind of have a forward-thinking view of 2 to 3 or 4 years. That's how fast politics moves. Because even today in 2023, you look at the 2020 race as Biden versus Trump. Then before that, you had 2018, historic wave of women going to Congress in reaction to Trump. And before that, you had 2016, Trump beating Hillary Clinton. Before that, you had the Obama years, and politics changes very fast. And that's just national level. So yeah, any questions there? Yep.
I hate to keep dwelling on your past, but that's something that I feel like I keep hearing between like other Gen Zs, is like just because like so much of our life has been put on the social media. So
Yeah.
When you said that they went after your thirst traps, how deep did they go, and did you do anything for like before you ran to like, let me delete this, let me delete this?
No, I don't, because
You
it's
didn't,
like,
you
no,
just ran.
I don't have any shame with that.
Right.
And it's also like, one thing that, you know, I pride myself on being a city commissioner, is like, I'm not, excuse my language, can't cut the camera off, but I'm not a fucking robot.
That's right.
And we have politicians and people who go in and they're very robotic. It's like, I have a personal life, and people are people. You know, especially if we're young, we have personal lives, and we have, you know, things we shouldn't be ashamed of. So it's like you have to be perfect to run for office, but the people in office are not perfect people. Yep, go ahead.
Would it be an effective strategy to expose the people currently in office to being a robot and pretend
Yes.
to be perfect?
Yes. I think it's like, I don't get, because I meet like a lot of politicians, and they're just, they're so robotic, it's like almost unnatural. They're like, you wouldn't think they're people. When it's like, you're not politicians, we should all be public servants. And we all have lives, we all have things that we're passionate about, we don't like, and that's at the basis where things should be rooted in. So yeah, they went after it, but I didn't have any shame. I mean, and a lot of people, you know, I had op-eds and articles written on me that, you know, it was important, but pro articles. They're like, we've never seen a candidate for public office have no shame with this. And, you know, I had folks, a gal who was running out of New Jersey, and she was running for Congress, and she was a sex worker. And she was running for highest office, and it's like again, just running challenges the narrative of who's fit for office. And it's important that we continue to run people. Successful or not, it's a numbers game. The more people we run, the more likely we're going to get representation. So next slide. Okay, we're going to go through some examples. Meet Alberto. He recently moved from Spain to small town Texas. He loves his community, but only recently became a member of it. Should Alberto run for office?
Is he aware
He
of
has
all
to be a
the,
citizen, right?
Yes.
yeah, he knows all the issues in his community, right? You have to live there maybe to kind of know what's going on, right? If I just move to another city and I'm there for 3 months, I'm like, I'm running for office, do I really know the community? Like, that's an interesting question.
Yes.
Perhaps yes, if his new community is very similar to his previous one.
Yes. Yes.
I think we should, no, I think we should wait and then, because he moved from another country, so it's better, like, stay there for a while and like get all the experience and know, like have more knowledge and then run.
Uh-huh. Yours?
You just said it, like it's a numbers game, like that's one part of it, but like being from the South, I would not run in a small town in Texas if I was not from the small town in Texas.
Yep.
It just depends on what his objectives are.
Yep.
Right? Like, I don't know if he wants to win, if he wants to like change the conversation, if he wants to prepare for a future run. Depends.
Also, I mean, I don't know if, you have to check the rules too, because like you can't just move from a small town in Texas to Spain and run for office too, so.
All very important. We'll go to the next one. I'm not going to give you all the answer just yet. Meek Marcos, he recently started a nonprofit and serves a big portion of the community. With that nonprofit, visitors to his anything possible in his space. Should he run for office?
It depends on how successful your nonprofit is, don't leave your community stranded. Yep. Unless you have someone who can take over it.
I feel like the answer to each one of those is, each one of these is going to be that they should run, because each one is representing somebody within their community. Like, even if they're new to a town, they are representing.
Yes.
So, yeah, maybe they should.
Okay.
Also, he's gonna have a lot of connections in the community.
So, everyone of every background should be represented in government. Tip, but no one person represents experiences of all people. So why I really stress these two examples is, Marcos, that last picture, he's a business leader, he looked different, and now look at him. This was just a stock image. Looks like he could be on the school board or he could run. So again, going back to what I said, regular people need to be represented. Folks who run for office and finally make it are of a certain class, a certain demographic, and probably haven't worked actual labor jobs in 20, 30 years. So there's a very disconnect of average people and those who need to be represented. For example, the urgency of healthcare or reproductive justice or human rights. If these issues don't impact them, they're not going to have any urgency on it. So folks who are the most impacted need to be the closest to power at the basis. That should be the root of why people run for office in government. So we need to challenge and reimagine what candidates to public office look like. Running pushes the needle too. So next slide. More than 326.7 million Americans need to be represented. Many elections occur without two challengers. So famously, in the state of even California, very, very blue state, Texas, very red state, and even Missouri, very red state. A lot of these races don't even have two challengers because people just don't run. So a lot of people who, for example, in Texas, that champion the anti-drag bill, or here in Missouri, that champion the abortion bill, didn't have not only a Democratic challenger, but even a Republican primary. So a lot of these people just walk into the state house without any real election. So it's important that if you run, that you are not only part of the conversation. We have a lot of instances, let's say even, when was the last election? 2016, you have Hillary Clinton at the top of the Democratic ticket, and you had Bernie Sanders, very progressive candidate. Although he didn't get the Democratic nominee, a lot of his policies made the front, the party platform. So not only in primary elections, but also general elections, people need to be challenged. People need to have to fill out surveys, have to explain themselves. It is not democratic for people to just walk into elected office. That is not okay. So that's why it's important, if it's a school board, city council, state house, that we have people who are running, even just putting their hat in the race. Even if they're not successful, they can steer the conversation, make things a priority. Okay, if you're going to win, you need to make sure this is a priority, why I ran. So running does a lot more than just winning. It moves the conversation, and it ensures in a lot of spaces that people have a choice. Because even your reddest part of Texas or reddest part in like the Boot Hill of Missouri, there are Democrats down here who've never gotten a Democratic candidate to vote for. Or even in California, there are Republicans out there who never get a Republican candidate to vote for. So it's important that we run people so we not only change the conversation, but so people have an option so that they're part of the process. And that also pushes out voter engagement. People who think, there's no challenger, there's no real opportunity or my voice to be heard, I'm not going to vote. So it's all interconnected to just democracy and society. Do we have any questions here? Okay. At the basis, public service is about serving others. If you're interested in that, you should run. On the same slide, personally, I don't like politics because it is not at the basis why I'm interested in city government is because it's about serving people. It's about making their lives better. For a lot of people, and that's why I get back to why we need people who run, it's like games. It's, I win, you lose, and it's over issues that don't really impact working class people, people who are suffering today, people who don't have health insurance, who don't have child care, who are struggling to pay their bills or medical bills or even afford rent. So if you're passionate about serving others, run, especially at the local level, because those change and impact people at the most, from a permit getting approved to this road being paved to this business having a liquor license. The local elections matter the most and greatly impact people. Yep. Yes.
I'm sorry if you went over this, but I have.
Second slide said no dumb questions.
How do you tell people that you want to run? Like,
Uh-huh.
how do you tell?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Do I have this slide? I literally thought I made that slide. Guess I didn't. But, you know, the most important thing is for you to do your research. Let's say if you want to run for school board and there's an incumbent that looks like they're termed out, it's important that, you know, you either reach out to them or reach out to your local party or that you are actively letting it known that you want to run. It's important that you get in. And I know that sounds kind of elitist saying that, but it's important that you're in those rooms and you're advocating for yourself. One thing that was hard for me was I didn't get a lot of support from the Democrats. I'm a progressive, and they thought a lot of my ideas were too extreme because I'm not a neoliberal. That's not what the fuck I am. So it's tough even saying go to your party because you may not even have support from them. In your city governments, especially Kansas City, everyone's liberal, everyone's progressive, deep blue city, and a lot of them are very neoliberal, and even think government works in trickle-down economics when it doesn't. It should be bottom-up economics. So it's tough because, again, as stated before, as young people, we don't know a lot of people who ran for office. We don't have a lot of donors we can call, people who own businesses or big-time donors. So I guess that is a tough question. The system is not set up for young people to run for office. It is set up for us to work free internships, but I think it's important that, you know, and that's, you know, why I ran, because they're like, you can be an intern. And I said, the hell I am. And then, you know, when I ran, I didn't win my race, but I landed, and they saw how well I did, and I became city commissioner. I received an appointment from the mayor, and I get to work on LGBTQ policy, from conversion therapy ban, putting on pride crosswalks, to ensuring our airport has gender-neutral bathrooms, that city employees are covered, both their partners with LGBTQ healthcare. We cover in that healthcare plan top and bottom surgery for trans non-binary folks. So I'm able to do very impactful things, and it's because I ran for office. And I said no. I said, I'm a young person, I am not gonna be an intern. So a lot of it is stubbornness, but it's like, you're gonna take me serious. And a lot of young people resonated with that, a lot of queer people resonated with that, and they're like, you know, maybe I should run. I don't need to, like you said, I don't need to ask anyone, or I don't need to come talk to anyone. So I think our system should be more built on that. It's not, sadly, but it's important that we continue to challenge that narrative on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, that people need to run for office when they're like 40 or 50. It's like, well, a lot of the problems that you all didn't manage, from school shootings, climate, I can't afford a house, I can't go anywhere, like it's forcing us to not be kids and have to grow up and have to fight for representation. So, yes.
I just want to note, I'm pretty sure in most cases you do have to file paperwork, and there's a deadline for running for office too. So in addition to things you said, you want to know, like, meet that deadline too,
Yes,
right? And in
yeah.
some cases you probably have, I think in some cases you need petition, like a certain amount of
Yeah.
signatures to run too, yeah.
In some cities you have to get petitions. When I ran for the county, I had to just show up at the county, pay $50, and I was on the ballot. You need to look into what the requirements are. For example, your district. Some of them will require you have to live a year in that district, or some of them will require you just have to, when I ran, it was just you have to be a voter over 18. So that threshold really opened things up for me. But then again, going back to barriers at the very beginning, I didn't have a lot to work with, because to run for city council, you gotta be 25. To run for governor, you gotta be 30. To run for Congress, you gotta be a certain age. And to run for state rep, you gotta be 25. So when I ran at 22, The only thing I could run for was county, because it was just you have to be a voter and over 18. So although it's important for us to run, there are barriers to young people running. There's even a push here locally and in Missouri for us to lower the voting age to even 16. A lot of things are not built in the favor of young people to run. Yep.
I was just gonna ask, can you go back to slide one? I wasn't there for that one.
This one.
Oh, I
Which-
So there was a slide where it said 2 tips, but I didn't see the slide running for
one?
office.
This
Okay.
one?
Thank you.
It's just the different places you could run. So
Like
city,
different
county,
areas.
yeah. State, do y'all get that stuff? Do I need to do economics? Non-economics. That's my degree. What's up?
So Justice, when you ran, I mean, you know, I mentioned at 22, you don't have a lot of connections.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
did you have somebody mentoring you in this process, or did you just Google everything? I mean, what?
I Googled everything.
Googled everything.
But at the time, so I not only led the Black Lives Matter movement, I have a lot of policy under my belt with not only work on the city's climate plan, before that, I wrestled in college, and even before that, I was student body president at UMKC. So I oversaw a $3 million budget as president there. So a county, 1 seat out of 9 in Jackson County, I'm like, well, there's never been a young person. I have what experience I do have, and that's important. I just decided to run. Especially the biggest reason why I did run is because we had an incumbent that was retiring, and he was there for 28 years, and he got his start in the Jimmy Carter era. And it's the bluest district in Jackson County. So me as a young, progressive, openly queer young person, I'm like, I'm gonna run. So that's what really led me to run, was especially the incumbent retiring. I mean, he was just very out of touch. He would be like, the blacks, he would say stuff like that, and it's like, sir, you can't say that today. It's like the black community, but yeah. He's a blue dog Democrat, or they're like Jimmy Carter era, you know, that's, even Bill Clinton era a little bit, yeah.
On that note, if I could ask, did you experience progressive infighting when you were, you know, having these conversations with other candidates and other people who were potentially supporters?
I didn't have progressive infighting. I had, the progressives were united.
Okay,
You
so
have
more-
the climate people, the queer folks, even I got the Democratic Socialists on my side. My biggest opposition with it being the bluest district was making it out of the primary.
Okay.
And that is your folks from the Missouri Democratic Party and your Biden-esque people, and folks who, you know, although the legislature in the county has been blue for 20, 30 years, they just didn't do anything. And they're, you know, they were very out of touch, and they still are. Like this past year is the first time they ever flew a pride flag over the county, or even thought of banning conversion therapy. And it's like, those are just the important issues. It's like, none of them care about that stuff, because none of them, you know, they're generations away from, because even our representation in the bluest district, he got his start in politics like I did at my age during the Carter administration. Very different Americas. Yeah.
Wait, so how many people were on your ticket? Like, how many people ran in the Democratic primary?
So we had 2 people. I ran against the secretary of the Missouri Democratic Party. Yeah,
Wow.
and and they thought I should wait my term, and I'm like, yeah, that's funny. So you know, one thing that surprised me the most is the district, there were 82,000 people. And for our primary, I got 6,000 votes, he got 10,000 votes. That's the biggest thing that surprised me. So out of 82,000 people, only 16,000 people voted. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, we'll at least get 40,000. Even that's still an F. That's still 50% about. But we're like, and it's a local election. So I think my biggest surprise when I did run was how many people do not participate. But then in the same place, when they looked at the metrics of our election, the 10,000 are your regular Democratic voters who vote. But my 6,000 were college age, people who've never voted in a county election, people who were in the queer community, who, you know, for the first time, like, you know, I'm gonna vote in this election because I see someone like me. So the important thing is, you know, and he outraised me like 5-1. I mean, lots of money, and put out mailer after mailer, and we just couldn't do that. A lot of ours was grassroots, knocking doors, the traditional way. So there wasn't a lot of progressive infighting. There was the party and progressives, and like them. That's always been a blue seat for the Democratic Party, but we want progressive seats. We don't want blue Missouri Democrat ideals. That's just not, especially in the bluest district in Kansas City, we don't need to run scared like we're running the suburbs or the rural part of the state. So my biggest surprise was how much people voted. But again, that's why I go back to running is so important, because people aren't going to care, participate, or even sign up or register to vote if they don't have anyone to vote for, feel like they're being represented. Oh, that's just a blue state. There's no primary. There's no Republican. I don't need a vote. You know, so it's both important on the Democratic and Republican side that people are being challenged. So going back, last slide, get out there and run. It's important.
So is the UFO coming?
Yes.
Before the aliens get here.
Yeah, so this is a section where if you have any questions, anything, do you all get government, like executive, legislative?
100%.
Okay. What's your question?
Well, so I think there's a lot of national tension on what Congress does and state legislatures, and I think it would be really helpful, especially since you did so much on climate. I was asking the students yesterday about like the issues they care about that they want to advocate on, like when they outside when talking to elected officials, and I find that like the big ideas of like I care about climate, I care about human rights, like getting that to us. What can someone in the county or city council as opposed to Congress or state do about that? Because climate is a huge issue and there's a million things under it. So could you just share a few specific things that you worked on just to give folks an idea of what they could advocate on?
Yeah, so one thing I think, you know, why it's important to understand levels of government is federal politics is like moving a ship liner. It's a bureaucracy and it moves very slow to the left, very slow to the right. Your state politics moves a little faster, but your county and city government move very fast. An ordinance can pass and completely shift a policy or priority in the city. So the thing I'm the most passionate about and I worked on is in the state of Missouri, there's no conversion therapy ban. But in Kansas City and Jackson County, there's a conversion therapy ban. So local politics, local government's important because while they're behind, that doesn't mean we can't protect people in our own community, especially when you have Democrats elected to local office. So not only does Kansas City ban that, but Jackson County has a penalty provision, not only for folks who are healthcare providers, but if you won't be protected under the veil of religion if you're harming children, like you will be put in jail. And a lot of conversion therapy bans just focus on the healthcare side, not religious institutions. So in regards to climate, a lot of issues from what city trucks are being used, if they're all electrics, to contracts, to even relationships with the utility companies, all happens locally. If that's Evergy or Spire and your organizations that fund not only Republican candidates, but they're like really into big oil. So it's like a lot on the local side, local municipalities have sole jurisdiction and a lot of power over their own community. So if nothing, it takes a while to change a country, it takes a while to change a state, but cities are on the forefront of, let's say, the fight for climate change, the fight for reproductive justice, or even here recently, Kansas City making itself sanctuary city for trans folks, saying that you will be able to get health care here while the state's doing whatever, or the nation, nationals, you know, put up a transports ban. So it's important not only to focus on the local side, because that's where the change can happen, and where cities, I think, need to do a better job about standing up against out-of-control state governments. Because it's like, at what point do we just not draw the line? So for Missouri, I've talked to folks from in Florida to Tennessee, these little towns like Nashville, or Orlando, Florida, or Tampa, Florida, these blue hubs, we need to start stepping it up. We need to make sanctuary cities, put LGBT protections on the law, and make it, a safe space for LGBT people, because they really are islands in a sea of red, and people need to be safe in those places. My last point is it's an economics issue, because not everyone can just leave the state. So we have a lot of people, and they reach out to me who leave the state of Missouri, and I'm happy they can leave, but we have to fight for people who cannot just move. I mean, those people who are low income and poor, who are usually queer folks, can't just up and move. So they deserve to be fought for too. Yep.
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
How did you work on your debate skills and public speaking and all of that at a young age?
Yeah, so I would say, I don't know. I watch a lot of speeches, and I read a lot. I read a lot, because it's like one of those, I think that's the best way to keep oppressed people down, is to not let them be educated. So a lot of, like, I could give you a class on the '08 mortgage crisis and all that. But, I do credit that to my, academic background. I have 3 undergraduate degrees, all in business and economics. I'm getting my MBA now. I'm going to get a PhD. So I've done everything I can to educate myself, and outside of that, understanding state policy. A lot of that stuff's public information. So actively, like I said at the beginning, before y'all walked in, is I'm no expert, but I'm actively learning. And it's important for people, like myself, and why I like this work, is once you give people the tools the first time, they don't need that ever again. Once people are educated, they know that for the rest of their lives. And then they can then give that to their network, and it creates a lot of empowerment with people. So I would say just get into regularly seeking that information. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wait, that question made me think, did you even have the opportunity to debate your opponent? Like, was there ever even a space given?
Yes.
But there actually was?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And it's just, it was interesting because it's like, I know he had more political experience, but like I on paper, I have the degrees to back up, like when we were talking about tax incentives or the crisis for property taxes in Jackson County. So it's tough because politics is politics. Even if you're more qualified or this office is better suited for you, sometimes the person with the most money or the most connections wins. And that's why there's often a disconnect and why regular people don't vote, don't care for politics, because it's usually whoever has the most influence or power wins. It's never in the interest of the electorate. So I'm just going to be honest with y'all, it's fun, but it's also shitty. And it's tough, especially when you're not, I couldn't self-fund my campaign. I don't have donors. I had to work some days and miss some debates because I needed to pay bills, and being a young person, no one takes serious in this. So I don't want that to scare y'all, but I also wish someone would have told me this stuff when I ran, especially like on the final day when I worked so hard, and we all worked so hard for only 16,000 people out of 82,000 to vote in the Blues District. And these are all Democrats. And it's just like, come on, people. Any questions?
What's the pay like? You talked about the unpaid work, but once you get in, were you
It's-
able to support yourself from the salary? Did you have to keep working while in office?
It's okay. Like for my role for the commission, I get about 30,000, but I make a lot of money doing like consulting stuff and talking at conferences and consulting cities on like human rights policies and their climate plans. So I make up a lot of money. But if I won my county race, it would have been about 70,000. So it's okay income. Or if you went down to the state and became a state senator or a state house member, you only make 35,000. So very peanuts for elected office. And that's why, again, why people who do run for office usually have a law firm on the side or are well off or retired. So even if you win, it is still very tough for working class people. especially if you have a family. You can't raise a family on $25,000 annually, and you're a Missouri House of Representative. That doesn't make any sense. So even, yes, running, but even people who serve don't look at it like a full-time job or something that's supposed to support you. At the county and down in Jeff City, they're like, this is supposed to be a part-time job. Like, what do you mean serving people and voting and creating laws is supposed to be a part-time job? And it's just because of the people we've had in elected office. Yes?
Do you have any resources to make it easier for people who don't have that much money to run for office?
Yes, I would say the best accessible and forward-thinking organization that can help nationally is Run for Something. They're a very good group, and they help people if they're running for school board, state rep, city council. They give free candidate trainings, free campaign manager trainings, and they'll even help you. They're like, okay, they'll sit down with you and they're like, okay, you have a state rep that wins in a landslide, you should probably look at this. So they're very good, and they're passionate about running working class, LGBTQ, young, progressive. They only do that. They don't just let anyone run. So they're very progressive org.
They do some checking, like, okay, so you support these rights, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's help you.
They don't run Republicans or folks who are outright. So I'd say groups like that. And depending on your identity or where you identify, you have a lot of other groups. Like another group that was helpful to me was Victory Institute. They run LGBTQ candidates, or the Victory Fund, and they're focused on that. Or if you're a female or a female identifying, you have Emily's List. So depending on your identity, it's important you connect with those folks, because those are the folks who are going to get it and be the most supportive of you. It's also in their best interest because they want to see more representation too. Yes?
Did religion come up on the campaign trail at all?
A little bit, because they knew I was gung-ho, even if I won, I still got it done, that we were going to ban conversion therapy ban. And they thought, well, I'm not pro-religion, or I don't support the church, yada, yada, yada. And my kryptonite to them is like, back up, y'all, I grew up Mormon. And they're like, oh. So I'm like, back the hell up. Yeah, I'm like, you are messing with the real one. So it did a couple times, because it's like, they knew I was serious on that stuff. And that a lot of conversion therapy bans just criminalize people who are healthcare providers or do it with a certificate. But a big portion of folks who do conversion therapy do under the veil of religion. They're pastors, or you'll see a kid go off to a summer camp, and it's just, yeah. So it's like these religious institutions, I don't care if they're a religious institution, if you're going to harm a child under unproven science, you're going to be held accountable. I don't care if you're church or not. So that did come in, because they thought I was going to jail priest. And I'm like, if you're going to abuse a child, yeah. And I'm not ashamed of that. So it's like, politics is politics, but it's also, you got to be honest with who you are. Because I remember when there were chances for us to get dirty, especially when my opponent was taking money from like Spire and Big Oil, I'm like, I'd rather lose with some dignity and have a future in this rather than throw mud and go after him on a bunch of other things. And they wanted me to do some crazy, I didn't even know that I had support like that. 10 minutes for meeting, sorry. But that's the thing, is like, you don't want to lose your soul in this work. And I think that's the most important, because I'd rather lose and be the activist for the rest of my life and have some dignity left and integrity, rather than just take money from an institution or entity I don't believe in just to win, just to be on top of that hill. So that's another thing, is don't let it consume you. Don't lose your soul, because there's a difference from public service and politics. It's important that you don't lose yourself in that. If you feel yourself doing that, you shouldn't be in this work. We do not need more politicians, because people get hurt and they don't get advocated for, and special interest advance and people get hurt. So any other questions on that? Why did that just do that?
Did anybody ask about your personal faith? Did you have to field questions over that?
Like what?
Like about your beliefs?
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, sometimes. I don't know if my my old website's up. This is Horn. Yep, there's me. Oh, there's my LinkedIn. But yeah, so this was it. I had a pretty good time, and it's about my election, and you'll have to fill out a ballotpedia. But before even I ran for office, I had a history in community work. So I wrestled in the NCAA, fought for LGBT rights, led the Black Lives Matter movement. And yeah, that's what led me to run, because it was inevitable. So it's me wrestling in the NCAA. I did a video for It Gets Better Project. I was openly gay athlete at the time. Student body president, UMKC. So inevitably, I was going to run for office. But at the basis, I've always been proud of being an activist, and that's, you know, really why I run. And yeah, that's basically it. And one thing that's tough, and I do want to share this with you all, when I ran, my campaign was defaced. And I think at the basis of it, it galvanized not only people, but it showed people what it's like to run as a queer candidate in the middle of Missouri. And it was tough. You know, I remember when this happened, it was two weeks before the election, and I'm like, I don't even want to run anymore. I said, I'm done. And I know that this galvanized people, but it showed at the end of the day why it's important that folks run. And they're like, these are my banners. And they're like, the news was like, is there any idea on if you should change your branding? And I said, okay, so be less gay? Because it's like, but it's like, it's even this fight today where people are so angered by the pride flag, and it's like they saw a young, queer, black man, and they're like, so it's like running is empowering, and it gives so much power to people. But you know, when you're a trailblazer and you're the first, you're gonna take some punches, and it's gonna fucking hurt. I'm not gonna act like it's not, but it's tough.
If you're making people angry, you're probably doing something.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. And even this, it's just a lot of narratives. It's, oh, I hate this in story. And it's like they just don't, how they covered me just doesn't make sense. Generation least likely to vote once yours. It's like, okay, yeah. So it's me running as a Gen Z. It's like, y'all don't vote, but yeah, exactly. So it's Gen Z candidates are jumping on Missouri ballots to energize interest. So it's like, it's just that, and I'm happy y'all see that, because it's like how they even cover you, or it's like it's a dig, and it's still like, it's just they don't take young people seriously.
Can you speak to that, though? You know, Gen Z being, you know, the least civically active generation, according to, you know, and whatnot. I mean, do you think that's a result of the internet? Do you think there's a lack of hope? Do you think, what do you think that comes from?
I don't think so. It's we have been locked out of things. Oh, what the hell is this? Basically, what the hell is that? Basically, the Washington Post did a thing on Gen Z candidates running for local and state, and they highlighted me. It's me running for the county, and that's the same thing they said. It's like, one, we have a system that does not cater to young people, and young people do not feel like the current system supports them, as well as, if I am voting, I'm not going to vote for someone who's 50 or 60 who doesn't even talk about climate, or LGBT rights, or folks having reproductive justice. So it's like they're not exactly engaging people, but in the same space you've seen in a lot of these, the last election, you had very tight races where it was Gen Z who actually canceled out the more older vote. So that's why the election was kind of centered, and it wasn't such a disaster, because we're getting to a point each election that, you know, voters of tomorrow, their Gen Z group, are doing a lot of mobilization about Gen Z. And the thing about us getting older is that our power and our base is going to continue to grow, because we have more and more people who are growing into that voting base, who are more and more focused on LGBTQ rights or human rights or reproductive justice. So, yeah. I hate that blocked that. Oh my gosh. But that's basically me. Yeah, I don't like that. Generation least likely to vote one's yours. It's like, okay, thank you for the support.
Way to convince the younger
Yeah.
generations to get out and vote.
It's like my
Yeah.
mom writes headlines for them.
Yeah, so that's, I know I'm still pretty young, but a lot of my experience you see on here did get me ready to run and doing all that. Oh, my thirst trap.
They were slandering you all?
Oh, yeah. Also, when I became chair, when I became chair,
Dare.
no, wait, when I became chair and I became hip, it's, someone said, hey, congrats.
That's unironically.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so it's like even me being chair and being young, it's like, it's funny because it's like, and look at that, it did kind of go viral. But it's like, it's funny and people relate to me because I'm not like a robot, like kind of my profile is, but it's like, I'm still funny. And it's like, even like one thing I think I challenge the narrative on, yeah, sorry about this, is like even like gay people running, and I love Mayor Pete, but people think like queer people are supposed to be like,
Boy Scouts?
yes, and like we can't be young, we can't be on dating apps, we can't be, sex positive, we can't like have fun. It's like thank you, 2 minutes. Our community is so much more than that, and it comes in different forms. But it's like for the mainstream, even for, this is going to be controversial if I say this, even like the first black president was well-spoken, suit, family man, and it's like they would have never elected someone from the hood or like stuff like that. It's like a lot of our first are how people want us to come, and what the way we come across. So it's like assimilate and then we'll let you in.
How
And
much do you look like the dominant culture?
Yeah, uh-huh.
And then you almost have to like Trojan horse your differences.
yeah, and I named that too because I think I get as far as I do being chair of the LGBTQ commission because I don't show up in City Hall in high heels, or I'm not trans, or I'm not loud or sassy. I'm very straight presenting, and it's important for me to create a commission and open doors for trans folks and folks who've never ever been in City Hall. So there is importance on us who get in the rooms to ensure that we are opening the doors for the rest of our community. Because going back to what I said, no one person represents community. I could never represent the entirety of the LGBTQ community. So yep, that's it. That's me. Thank you, everyone.